Luke didn't like sharing rooms. He liked his space, his peace, his quiet. But on the far side of the Velian research outpost, choices were few. Humans were new here. The Velian Science Council had only recently accepted human workers, and that, too, in low numbers. So when they told Luke he would be rooming with an alien, he nodded and kept his mouth shut. His roommate was named Alira. She was tall, graceful, and had soft blue skin that shimmered slightly under the lights. Her long black hair moved like flowing silk when she walked. Her eyes were large and violet, always calm, always watching. She didn't speak much at first, and that suited Luke just fine. They shared a medium-sized room with 2 sleep pods, a small table, and 1 shared wash unit. The base was quiet. Most workers focused on their assigned tasks and didn't mingle too much. Luke handled power systems. Lyra worked with biodata and life-form behavior. Her paths rarely crossed during work hours. Days passed, then weeks. Slowly, the ice between them started to melt. Sometimes Alira asked Luke if he wanted tea. Sometimes Luke asked her about her strange glowing plants. They kept things polite. It wasn't friendship, but it wasn't cold either. Just 2 people. Surviving far from home. Then came the storm. Luke had just finished his shift when the base lights flickered. An alarm sounded sharp and red. The computer voice echoed through the halls. Solar flare approaching. Lockdown initiated. All systems in safe mode. All personnel remain inside. The doors sealed shut. External communication dropped. The outpost was built for this. It could survive heavy radiation, but it meant being locked in for a while, maybe days. How long did these storms last? Luke asked as he returned to the room. Alira stood still, hands pressed together. Unknown. Could be short, could be long. Depends on the sun's mood. Luke gave a small laugh. Great, they made a plan. Food packs were stacked. Power. Usage would be kept low. They agreed to keep separate corners of the room, so everything seemed calm. But that night, something changed. Luke was about to lie down when he heard strange breathing from Alira's pod. It was shaky, heavy, like she had run a mile. He knocked gently. You okay? No answer. He waited, then spoke again. Alira. She replied, voice tight, I'm fine. But she didn't sound fine, not even close. By the next day, she avoided him completely. She sat far, didn't speak, barely ate. Her skin looked brighter. Somehow, and her eyes avoided his. She didn't wear her usual head wrap. Her hair was messy. Luke noticed her fingers trembling when she reached for her datapad. Alira, talk to me, he said softly. What's wrong? Finally, she sighed. Her voice was tired. You deserve to know. She sat on the edge of her sleep pod, looking down at her hands. My species goes through a cycle. It's natural. Comes every few years. We call it the bloom. Others call it mating season. Luke blinked. Okay, it's not about love or want, it's just a deep biological urge. I take injections to stop it when I'm working off-world. But the storage for my medicine was damaged during the flare surge. So, it's starting now. She nodded slowly. I will not harm you. I can control myself. Will stay in my pod. Do not worry. I'm not worried, Luke said gently. I'm just surprised. That's all. Alira smiled weakly. Humans always are. He gave a small nod. Well, you don't have to stay locked up. We'll figure out a way. To make this not awkward, Alira looked at him, surprised. You're not scared? I've worked with worse situations. You're still you. Her expression softened, and for the first time in days, she laughed softly. They made new rules. If she needed time alone, she would say so. They kept a respectful distance. No sudden touches. No sharing of sleeping gear. Luke adjusted quickly. It wasn't hard to be kind. Lyra was strong and calm most of the time. But now he saw her vulnerability, and something about that made her more human in his eyes. But even with all the rules, things got harder. One night the temperature dropped. The storm outside was stronger than expected, and the heating unit failed. The room grew cold. Not dangerous, but uncomfortable. They wrapped in thermal layers. Luke sat at the table, rubbing his hands. Lyra sat across from him, her legs drawn. Close. "I hate this storm," she muttered. "Me too." She looked at him with tired eyes. "If we were on my planet, I'd be in a temple right now, alone, watched by elders safe.com. Not like this." Luke leaned forward. "You're doing great. This is tough. Yeah, but you're holding strong." "You're kind," he shrugged. "You're brave." They stared at each other in silence. Not awkward, just understanding. As days passed, the outside storm didn't stop. Communication remained dead. And inside their little room, things kept shifting, small things. Alira began sitting closer. Luke began waiting for her tea. They shared more words. She told him stories of Velian oceans and sky lantern festivals. He told her about his dog back on Earth and how he once crashed a hovercart during training. And under all that, tension remained. Not loud, not dangerous. Just present. Something unspoken, growing quietly. But Luke stayed calm, and Alira stayed strong. For now, the base had been silent for 4 days. Luke sat by the small heater, fixing a loose circuit with cold fingers. Power was weak, and he was trying to stretch every bit of energy they had left. Alira was curled up on her sleep pod, her eyes closed, but her breath uneven. Her skin was glowing again, even brighter now, and there was a slight shimmer on her neck. "How are you feeling?" he asked without looking up. "Better than yesterday," she whispered. "Worse than tomorrow, I hope." He smiled at her reply. It was her way of saying she was trying. She always tried. The silence in the room felt heavier now, not because of fear, but because of the weight of waiting. Outside, the storm still roared. The walls trembled slightly, as if reminding them how alone they were. Alira sat up slowly and looked at him. "Did you sleep a little?" "Not enough," he said, checking another wire. "The heater's giving up?" "We can share heat," she said suddenly. Luke looked up. "Not for comfort," she added quickly. "For survival. Velian biology loses warmth quickly during bloom." "Right," he said, thinking. "We'll figure it out." They didn't move closer yet. It was still space, both physical and emotional. But it was shrinking, and they both felt it. That evening, Alira cooked a warm broth from emergency packs. The scent filled the room, soft and calming. They sat on the floor, their backs against the wall, bowls in hand. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. Sometimes Luke replied. "But I think I'd miss this view more. The stars." "No," he smiled. "This weird blue alien sitting next to me." She blinked, then laughed. Weird. In a good way. Her laughter faded into a soft sigh. "I never thought I'd be stuck like this. Someone not of my kind. Not during bloom." "Me neither," he said. "But it's not so bad." They didn't speak for a while. The only sound was the storm humming outside and the quiet slurps of their broth. Finally, Alira put down her bowl and leaned back. "I should have told you earlier," she said. "Told me what?" "That bloom isn't just ... physical. It affects the heart too. Feelings can grow faster, stronger, even confusing ones." Luke stayed still. "So it's not just instinct." "Not always," she whispered. "Sometimes it's real. Sometimes it's both." "And how do you tell the difference?" "You wait," she said, "until the bloom ends. If you still feel it, it was real." Luke nodded slowly. "Then we wait." That night, the temperature dropped even more. The heater blinked and failed. Luke pulled out the last thermal blanket and looked at Alira. "We'll need to share it," he said. She nodded, her expression calm, but her eyes unsure. They sat on the floor and wrapped the blanket around them both. At first, there was space between them, but cold was cold. Soon their shoulders touched, then their arms. Luke could feel her shiver. "You okay?" as she said, teeth gently clicking. "Your warmth helps." He rested his head lightly against hers. "Just don't steal it all." She chuckled softly. "I make no promises." They fell asleep like that, leaning on each other, the storm still crying outside. The next morning, they woke up still touching. Alira didn't pull away. Neither did Luke. I didn't sleep like that in years, she said quietly. Me neither, he replied. The warmth of the moment didn't fade. Instead, it followed them through the day. They worked side by side, fixing small problems, cleaning the room, checking on food levels. They moved in sync now, as if something between them had clicked. Illyra looked brighter, not just from the bloom, but from something else. She laughed more. She asked Luke about his family, his favorite Earth meals, and his worst childhood memory. One time, he said, grinning, I climbed a tree to impress a girl. I got stuck for 2 hours. Was she impressed? No, she called my brother to get me down. Illyra laughed so hard her eyes watered. In return, she told him about Velian. School rituals. How she once dyed her skin orange by mistake before a royal ceremony. You were royalty? Luke asked, surprised. Minor royalty, she said. My family left politics. They chose science. I chose silence. I'm glad you chose this. Mission. Me too, she said, looking at him for a long moment. Time passed. They forgot to check the clock. They forgot to feel the storm pressing down on them. It was just them now, in their own little world, until the warning beep broke it. Luke rushed to the panel. The power system had taken another hit. The oxygen cycle was weakening. We have maybe 2 days before the backup fails, he said. Illyra stood behind him, calm but serious. We need to reroute the power, manually. There's a crawl tunnel under the base, he said. It's narrow. One of us has to go inside and reset the coils. I'll go, she said. No, Luke replied quickly. You're still in bloom, and that tunnel's cold and cramped. Your body's already stressed. She hesitated. Then we go together. He looked at her, unsure. We trust each other now, don't we? She asked softly. He nodded. We do. The crawl tunnel was tight, dark, and full of dust. Luke led the way, holding a small light in his mouth as he moved through the narrow space. Behind him, Illyra followed slowly, her knees brushing the cold metal floor. Watch your breathing slow and controlled. Watch your head, Luke said softly. Pipe on the left. See it, she replied. Their hands and knees made soft thuds as they moved deeper under the base. Wires hung from the ceiling, old power coils buzzed faintly. The air was thinner here, and both could feel it. They reached a small junction box. Luke leaned over it, wiped off the dust, and opened the panel. This is the one, he said. We just need to reroute the charge from here to the main cycle. Illyra leaned beside him. How long will it take? Depends. Maybe an hour? Illyra nodded and sat down, her back resting against the tunnel wall. Her skin shimmered softly in the light, but her face looked calm, calmer than before. Luke got to work. Wires were old. Some were melted. He had to be careful as he adjusted. A red cable, he felt her eyes on him. You're good with your hands, she said. He glanced at her. Comes with the job. Do you miss Earth? Sometimes, he said, but I don't miss being alone. Illyra's eyes stayed on him. You don't feel alone here? He paused. Not anymore. Silence filled the small tunnel, not uncomfortable, just quiet. Like the air itself was listening. My people, Illyra said, don't do this. We don't talk during bloom. We hide. We wait. But this is different. Luke didn't speak, kept working, but his heart beat faster. I don't. Want to hide anymore? She whispered. He looked at her then, really looked. Not just the blue skin, the glowing eyes, or the way her hair curled gently at her shoulders. He saw her courage, her honesty, fear. You don't have to, he said. Suddenly a spark flew from the panel. Ah! Luke pulled his hand back. His glove was burned, fingers tingling. Are you hurt? Illyra crawled closer. Just a small shock, he said. She reached for his hand. Gently, slowly. Her fingers were cool against his skin. She held his palm, inspecting the light burn. You're always helping me, she said softly. Let me help you. Luke smiled. You already are. Illyra held his hand for a moment longer, then looked at the panel. What now? Ain't. Switch the last 2 coils. They'll reroute power and stabilize the oxygen. Let's do it, she said. They worked side by side. The space was tight, their shoulders brushing often, their hands sometimes overlapping. But they didn't pull away. An hour later, the system beeped. Green light flashed. It worked, Luke said, relief in his voice. Illyra smiled. We did it. They crawled back slowly, this time more relaxed. When they finally reached their room, they collapsed on the floor, tired but smiling. Next time, Luke said, we make the base smarter. Next time, Illyra said, we don't have a storm. They both laughed. As the base warmed up and air felt fresher, Luke stood up and brought 2 cups of water. He handed one to her and sat down beside her. You were great in there. He said, so were you, she replied. You always are. He looked at her for a long moment. Illyra, can I ask something? Of course. When this bloom ends, when everything is back to normal, will you still feel the same way? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on his. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. I don't know. But right now, everything feels real. And I want to. Hold on to that. Luke nodded. Me too. They sat in silence again. Not from lack of words, but from feeling too much at once. The next day, the base felt brighter. Systems were stable. Food levels were enough. Storm still howled outside, but inside it felt peaceful. Illyra looked healthier. Her skin glowed less, her breathing steady. The worst of the bloom was passing. Her voice had returned to normal. Light and clear, I feel like myself again, she said over breakfast. Do you miss the other version of you? Luke asked. She smiled. Parts of her, yes. She was braver. She's still here, he said. Illyra looked down, then reached across the table. Touching his hand lightly, you were patient, she said. Most wouldn't be. You trusted me. I didn't want to break that. You didn't. You gave me safety.
Ow.
Luke turned his hand, gently holding hers. You gave me something too. What's that? You made this place feel like? Home, her eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. Then let's not forget it. Just then the emergency screen flickered. Incoming message. They both stood and stared. The message was short, storm weakening. Rescue ships will arrive in 48 hours. Prepare for recovery. Luke looked at Illyra. We're going home. She said, maybe we're already there. He smiled. Either way. Everything's changed now. The message kept playing on the screen. Rescue arriving in 48 hours. Luke and Illyra stood in silence, watching it flash over and over. Part of him felt relief. They were going to be safe. The storm would pass. The outpost would open. But another. Part of him didn't feel ready. He looked at Illyra and saw the same feeling in her eyes. We should start packing, she said quietly. He nodded. Yeah, we should. They moved around the room slowly, gathering what little they had brought. Luke folded his uniform. Illyra sealed her research notes. Everything felt heavier now, not the objects, but the moment. What happens next? He asked, not looking up. We return to our stations, she said. We finish the mission. Then go home. And what about us? Illyra didn't answer right away. She looked at the corner of the room where they had once sat under the shared blanket, where they had laughed and cried and waited out the storm together. I don't want to forget this, she said. But Velian tradition says bloom feelings should be left behind. Do you believe in that? I did, she whispered. But then I met you. Luke walked over and sat beside her. We're not the same people who arrived here. That matters. It does, Illyra agreed. But others won't understand. Then let them not understand, he said. Just want to know what you feel. She looked at him, her violet eyes calm. I feel like something important started here.
Nice.
I just don't know what name to give it. Let's not give it a name yet, Luke said softly. Let's just carry it with us. Illyra smiled. Later that day, Luke returned from the tech bay with a surprise. He had found an old projector device and managed to fix it using spare parts. You fixed that old thing? Illyra asked with wide eyes. Yep, he said proudly. Loaded a few Earth movies on it. Want to watch one? What kind? Nothing serious, just something to make you laugh. She nodded, and they dimmed the lights. The small screen glowed against the wall. The movie was silly, full of human jokes and cartoon faces. Alira laughed often, covering her mouth as if surprised at herself. "You humans are strange," she said between laughs. "Yeah," Luke chuckled. "But charming, right?" Sometimes she teased. They watched in silence for a while, shoulder to shoulder outside. The storm was fading. Inside, the space between them had disappeared. After the movie, Lyra turned to him. "I don't want these 48 hours to pass," she said quietly. "Then let's make the most of them." The next day, they cooked together. The food packs were almost gone, but they made something warm with spices and herbs Alira had brought from her planet. "This smells like home," she said, stirring the pot. "Then maybe you'll take me." "There someday," Luke said. "Maybe," she smiled. "If you don't mind cold rivers and singing trees. Sounds better than city life." They sat and ate slowly, talking about their dreams. Lyra said she once wanted to fly ships, but her family pushed her toward science. Luke admitted he only joined the program to escape Earth's noise. "Funny," she said. "We both ran away and ended up finding something." "Maybe we found each other," he said. Her cheeks turned a lighter shade of blue. "Maybe we did." As night came, they didn't go to separate sleep pods. Instead, they made a small bed on the floor using the last of the blankets. It wasn't about comfort. It was about not wasting time. They lay there side by side looking. "At the ceiling, do you hear that?" Alira asked. "What? The silence?" she whispered. "No storm, no alarms, just peace." "Right." Luke nodded. "I think it's the first time since this all started." She turned to face him. "Comes. We'll be asked many questions." "I know. What will you say?" "I'll say, I met someone who saved me." Alira smiled. "I'll say I found a reason not to hide anymore." They fell asleep like that, their hands touching lightly between the blankets. Morning came with soft light through the sealed windows. The rescue signal was stronger now. Ships were on the way. The outpost buzzed gently with systems rebooting. "This is it," Luke said as he rolled up the blankets. "Yes," Alira replied. "Almost time." But neither moved quickly. They dressed in silence, packed slowly, and took one last look at their shared room. The walls that once felt cold now felt full of memories. Alira placed her hand on the door panel. "Ready?" "Really?" Luke said. "But let's go anyway," as the doors unsealed, and fresh air filled the hallway. They stepped out side by side. The storm had ended, but something else had just begun. The rescue team arrived right on time. 2 clean silver ships landed outside the outpost with a soft hum. Human and Velian officers stepped out, wearing protective suits. Scanning for damage and checking the storms after dash effects, Luke and Alira stood near the main gate as it opened for the first time in days. Sunlight poured in, and fresh air rushed through the halls. It felt strange after being locked inside for so long. "Engineer Luke Hayden?" one human officer asked. "That's me. You're safe. Any injuries?" "None. Just tired." The officer turned to Alira. She nodded. "We'll take you both back to Central Command for debriefing. Rest will come later." As they walked toward the shuttle, Luke glanced at Alira. Face was calm, but her eyes were distant. Everything around them was moving fast again. People, voices, reports, noise. The quiet world they had shared was gone. They sat side by side in the back of the rescue shuttle, strapped into narrow seats. Through the window, the outpost grew smaller. Luke felt like a part of him was being left behind. "We'll be assigned." "Different quarters now," Alira said softly. "I figured," Luke replied. "And separate schedules." Probably they didn't say anything else. Silence wasn't cold, just filled with the weight of change. When they landed at the central base, they were taken for scans and rest. Doctors checked vitals. Scientists asked questions. Reports were written. Luke was given a private room, quiet but empty. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything felt too normal now. He missed the soft hum of the old heater. The way Alira made tea. The way she whispered stories before falling asleep the next day. They were both called to the central counselor room full of human and Velian leaders. "Your survival is commendable," said a Velian elder. "You managed to maintain order? Under stress? We thank you both," added a human officer. "But we have one concern." Luke raised an eyebrow. "Concern?" "During the lockdown, emotional bonds may have formed," the Velian elder said. "Such bonds during bloom are considered unstable. Decisions made under such conditions can affect future missions." Lear stood tall. "We followed every rule. We kept respectful space. And when things became difficult, we worked together." Luke added, "We didn't break anything, not even trust." The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then a human woman spoke, softer. "We're not here to judge, only to understand. If anything has changed between you two, you must decide if it will affect your work." Alira looked at Luke. He met her eyes. Then she said, "Our work will not suffer." "Then the council has no objections," the Velian elder said. "Are both cleared?" After the meeting, Luke walked outside the command building. The sky was clear, stars barely visible. The wind felt colder than the outposts, somehow. He heard soft footsteps. Alira stood beside him. "You did well in there," he said. "So did you." They stood there in silence. No alarms, no locked doors, no rules holding them back. "You believe them?" she asked. "About bloom bonds being unstable?" Luke thought for a moment. "I believe stress changes people. But it also shows truth. And what we had wasn't just the bloom." "Oh, I think so too," she said quietly. He looked at her. "So what now?" she replied. "I decide what I want. Not what tradition says. And what do you want?" "I want to keep this. Whatever we started," she said. "Not as something rushed or forced, but real." Luke smiled. "Then let's build it." Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal. Luke was assigned to lead the next upgrade mission on another outpost. Alira joined the same mission as the head of biology research. Some officers were surprised. Some whispered. But neither of them cared. They worked during the day. At night, they shared walks across the research platform. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. Always side by side. One evening, Luke brought her a small device. "What's this?" she asked. "A memory cube. I made it from the outpost scraps." She opened it and found a tiny screen. It showed a looping video of the room they once shared. The heater glowing, the tea steaming. "You saved this?" "Yeah," Luke said. "I didn't want to forget it." "Thank you," Alira said, touched. She placed her hand gently on his. "Maybe we can visit that outpost again, not for survival. This is for memory." "I'd like that," he said. As time moved on, their bond grew not from urgency or instinct, but from trust, patience, quiet understanding. They were no longer just survivors of a storm. They were something more. The new mission was ready. Luke and Alira stood side by side on the launch platform, waiting for the ship that would take them to a distant outpost. The sun was bright, the air fresh. The storm was long gone, but its memory lingered in there. "Minds ready?" Luke asked, adjusting his gear. Alira smiled softly. More than before. The ship's engines hummed. The hatch closed behind them. As the stars stretched outside the window, Luke felt a calm settle over him. He looked at Alira, who was watching the passing lights with quiet eyes. "Do you remember the first night?" he asked. "How could I forget?" she replied. "Cold, dark, and scared. And now it's warm, bright, and hopeful." Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining easily. The days on the new outpost passed quickly. They worked well as a team, their skills complementing each other perfectly. They fixed broken equipment, gathered samples, and shared meals. Under the alien sky, one evening as they watched twin moons rise, Alira turned to Luke. "Do you think others will accept us?" she asked. "Some may not," he said. "But we don't need everyone's approval, just each other's." She nodded, eyes shining. "I want to make this work. For us, and for those who come after." Luke smiled. "We'll build a new path. One where differences don't divide." Their friendship deepened into something tender and strong. The bloom had passed, but the bond it sparked remained, not forced. By instinct, but chosen freely. As the mission ended, they prepared to return to the central base. "Home," Luke said quietly. Illyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "Home," she repeated. The journey back was calm. They talked about future plans, more missions, shared discoveries, and quiet moments together. They laughed about their first awkward days, the storm, and how much had changed. At the central base, their work was recognized. Their partnership became a symbol of hope between species. Leaders spoke of cooperation and understanding, inspired by their story. But Luke and Illyra didn't seek fame. They sought a simple life, one built on trust, respect, and care. One night, as they stood on the observation deck, looking at the stars, Illyra smiled. "Thank you for staying," she said softly. "Thank you for trusting me," Luke replied. They held hands, knowing that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together, and everything truly changed after that.